What happens when the most ruthless female billionaire on Wall Street is forced to trade her empire for a husband who buys his groceries on layaway? Chloe Sterling spent 10 years building a logistics dynasty, crushing rivals with a single signature. But when a cruel family ultimatum forces her to marry a destitute mechanic with a 6-year-old daughter just to keep her CEO title, she thinks her life is over. She thinks she's bringing a peasant into her glass castle. She doesn't know that the quiet man fixing her sink is secretly the apex predator of global finance, and he's about to flip her entire world upside down. The boardroom of Sterling Global was 34 floors above Manhattan, a glass box where careers were made and destroyed before the morning coffee went cold. At the head of the long mahogany table sat Chloe Sterling. At 32, she was the youngest female CEO in the Fortune 500. She wore a tailored charcoal Tom Ford suit that looked like armor, her icy blue eyes scanning the quarterly reports with the precision of a hawk. Richard Caldwell is making another aggressive push, her CFO muttered, sliding a thick dossier across the table. He's buying up proxy shares. If we don't secure the merger with the European division, Caldwell's hostile takeover could trigger a board vote by next month. Chloe didn't blink. Let Richard play in the sandbox. We are not selling, and we are not merging on his terms. Liquidate the underperforming assets in the Midwest and buy back our shares. I want a fortress around this company. She adjourned the meeting, leaving the executives scrambling. But the moment the heavy glass doors sealed behind her, her phone buzzed. It was a private number. "Grandfather?" Chloe answered, her tone softening just a fraction, though her posture remained rigid. "My office. Now," Arthur Sterling rasped. The patriarch of the Sterling family was 81, tethered to an oxygen tank, but still wielding influence like a sledgehammer. 20 minutes later, Chloe stood in his dimly lit study, surrounded by leather-bound books and the suffocating scent of cigar smoke and old regret. "You're losing your grip on the board, Chloe," Arthur coughed, glaring at her from his wingback chair. "Caldwell is circling like a vulture. The shareholders want stability. They want to see you anchored." "I am anchored to this company," Chloe fired back. "I tripled our valuation in 3 years." "Valuation isn't legacy." Arthur slammed his cane into the Persian rug. "I hold the controlling 51% of the voting shares in the family trust, and I am transferring them to you on one condition." Chloe's heart stopped. "What condition?" "You will marry, not Caldwell, not one of these Wall Street snakes. 25 years ago, a man named Jonathan Cross pulled me from a burning vehicle on the Pacific Coast Highway. I promised him half my fortune. He refused. He died last year in a construction accident, leaving behind a son and a young granddaughter. They are living in poverty in Queens. You will marry the son, Nathaniel Cross. You will adopt his daughter. You will give them the Sterling protection, and in return, the trust is yours." Chloe laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You're joking. You want me to marry a charity case? A construction worker's son? Grandfather, this is corporate suicide. The press will tear us apart." "The papers are drawn," Arthur said coldly, sliding a leather folder onto his desk. "Marry Nathaniel Cross by Friday, or I sell my 51% to Richard Caldwell." The silence in the room was deafening. Chloe looked at the folder, feeling the walls of her empire closing in. She had sacrificed her youth, her personal life, and her peace of mind for Sterling Global. She couldn't let it fall to Caldwell. "Fine," she whispered, her voice venomous. "Where is he?" 2 hours later, Chloe's sleek black Maybach pulled up to a crumbling brick apartment building in the deepest, most neglected pocket of Queens. The street was lined with overflowing dumpsters and rusted cars. Chloe stepped out, her Louboutin heels clicking against the cracked pavement, looking utterly alien in her designer suit. Her bodyguard, Davis, shadowed her closely. She climbed 3 flights of stairs that smelled of stale beer and boiled cabbage, finally stopping at apartment 3B. She knocked. The door creaked open to reveal a man who looked like he had been carved out of exhaustion. Nathaniel Cross was tall, broad-shouldered, and covered in engine grease. He wore a faded gray t-shirt and ripped denim. His dark hair was messy, falling over deep-set, striking green eyes that held an unnerving stillness. He didn't look intimidated by the billionaire standing in his doorway. He just looked tired. "Can I help you?" His voice was a deep, gravelly baritone. "Are you Nathaniel?" Chloe asked, her nose wrinkling slightly at the smell of motor oil. Before he could answer, a little girl with messy pigtails and a missing front tooth peeked out from behind his legs. She was holding a battered, stuffed rabbit. "Daddy, is she the lady from the TV?" Nathaniel gently pushed the girl back inside. "Go watch your cartoons, Lily. Give me a minute." He turned back to Chloe. "Who's asking?" "I am Chloe Sterling, Arthur Sterling's granddaughter." Nathaniel's expression didn't shift. He wiped his greasy hands on a rag. "Arthur, right," he called. "Said you were coming." "Then you know why I'm here at you," Chloe said, stepping into the cramped apartment without being invited. The furniture was thrifted, the wallpaper was peeling, but it was obsessively clean. "Let me make this perfectly clear, Mr. Cross. This is a transaction. You will sign a prenuptial agreement. You will receive a monthly stipend of $50,000. Your daughter will be placed in the best private school in Manhattan. In exchange, you will pose as my devoted husband in public. You will not interfere with my life, and you will stay out of my way." Nathaniel leaned against the doorframe, watching her with a calm, piercing gaze that made Chloe inexplicably uncomfortable. Most men cowed before her. Nathaniel just looked at her like she was a loud, misbehaving bird. $50,000 a month, Nathaniel repeated, his tone flat. "Is it not enough?" Chloe snapped, pulling out her checkbook. "Name your price. I don't care. I just need this done." Nathaniel glanced back into the apartment, his eyes lingering on Lily, who was sitting on a patched-up sofa. A shadow passed over his face, a brief, dark flash of something incredibly dangerous, before it vanished back into the exhausted mechanic persona. "I don't want your money, Miss Sterling," Nathaniel said quietly, "but Lily needs a safe place, a secure place, somewhere with walls higher than this." Chloe frowned, missing the hidden weight in his words. "My penthouse has state-of-the-art security. You'll be fine." "Good," Nathaniel said. He tossed the grease rag onto a side table. "I'll sign your contract." 3 days later, the marriage was finalized in a sterile, 5-minute courthouse ceremony. Chloe wore a white business suit. Nathaniel wore a cheap, ill-fitting rental tuxedo. The only witness was Arthur's lawyer. That evening, Nathaniel and Lily moved into Chloe's sprawling, 10,000-square-foot penthouse overlooking Central Park. "These are your quarters," Chloe said, gesturing to the east wing of the apartment. "Lily's room is next to yours. I sleep in the west wing. We do not cross paths after 9 p.m. The kitchen is shared, but I have a private chef who prepares my meals. If you need anything, speak to my assistant." Lily was spinning in circles in the massive marble foyer, her eyes wide. "Daddy, the floor is super shiny. You can slide in your socks." Nathaniel smiled, a genuine, warm expression that momentarily transformed his rough face. "Careful, Bug. Don't break anything." He looked at Chloe. "Thank you for the space." "It's a contract," she replied coldly, turning on her heel. "Remember the rules." For the first 2 weeks, they lived like ghosts, haunting the same mansion. Chloe worked grueling 18-hour days, fighting off Richard Caldwell's relentless corporate sabotage. Her shipping lines in the Pacific were suddenly tied up in bureaucratic red tape, costing her millions daily. The stress was eating her alive. She began noticing odd things about her new husband. Despite the $50,000 monthly stipend she deposited into an account for him, Nathaniel never touched it. He still woke up at 5 a.m., but instead of going to a garage, he made breakfast for Lily, packed her lunch for her new elite private school, and spent hours sitting on the balcony with a cheap burner phone and a worn leather notebook. One evening, Chloe came home early, nursing a massive migraine. Her deal with Omnicorp, a massive semiconductor manufacturer, had fallen through. Caldwell had outbid her, bribing the Omnicorp executives. She walked into the kitchen and stopped. The private chef was gone. Instead, Nathaniel was standing at the industrial stove, stirring a pot of homemade tomato soup. He wore a simple black t-shirt that stretched tightly over his back. "Chef is off today," Nathaniel said without turning around. Lily wanted grilled cheese. "There's enough if you want some." "I don't eat carbs," Chloe muttered, dropping her briefcase onto the marble island. She rubbed her temples. "And I don't have time to eat. Omnicorp just pulled out of our supply chain agreement. We're bleeding capital." Nathaniel slowly turned down the heat on the stove. Omnicorp? The Seattle branch? Chloe laughed bitterly. Yes, the Seattle branch. Not that you would understand. It's corporate politics, Nathaniel. Not a broken carburetor. Nathaniel didn't react to the insult. He just plated a grilled cheese sandwich, cut off the crusts for Lily, and set it on the counter. Corporate politics usually comes down to leverage. Who's the CEO of Omnicorp? Victor Vance? Victor Harrison, Chloe corrected, too tired to care why he was asking. He's in Richard Caldwell's pocket. Right, Harrison, Nathaniel murmured. He wiped his hands on a towel. Excuse me, I need to make a quick call. Checking in on my old boss at the garage. Nathaniel walked out onto the freezing terrace, sliding the glass door shut behind him. He pulled the cheap burner phone from his pocket. The moment the glass door sealed, his posture changed. The tired, slumping mechanic vanished. His spine straightened, his shoulders squared, and his green eyes turned cold and predatory. He dialed a 12-digit encrypted number. It was answered on the first ring. Sir? A crisp British voice spoke. Sebastian, Nathaniel said, his voice dropping an octave into a low, terrifying register. I need you to pull the leverage file on Victor Harrison at Omnicorp. Right away, Mr. Cross. Ah, yes. We hold the debt on his offshore gambling accounts in Macau. Roughly 40 million in arrears. We also have the satellite photos of his undocumented meetings with the Regulatory Commission. Call him, Nathaniel commanded softly, watching the Manhattan skyline. Tell him, N.H. Vanguard is displeased. Tell him if he doesn't sign the exclusive supply chain contract with Sterling Global by 8 a.m. tomorrow, I will personally liquidate his life. He will be begging for pennies on the street. Understood, sir. Shall I also make a move on Richard Caldwell? Not yet, Nathaniel said, his eyes narrowing as he looked through the glass at Chloe, who was massaging her temples in the kitchen. Let Caldwell play his hand a little longer. I want to see his entire network before I burn it to the ground. Yes, Mr. Cross. How is Miss Lily? She's safe, Nathaniel said, his voice softening slightly. The Sterling penthouse is a fortress. Whoever put the hit out on Sarah hasn't tracked us here. Maintaining the cover is our top priority. Very good, sir. Nathaniel hung up. He took a deep breath, letting the terrifying aura of the world's most powerful shadow billionaire bleed away, replacing it with the docile, quiet mechanic. He walked back inside. Garage is doing fine, he told Chloe. The next morning, Chloe was jolted awake by her phone ringing frantically.